Majority of people spend most of their life accumulating debt, but there are two forms of debt that we're going to be looking at today, guys. The first one being good debt, and the second one, of course, being the bad debt. Now, for the majority of Americans, when you're looking to borrow or you're looking to buy something, most people do not save up enough money to buy a car, to buy a house, to actually buy that product in cash, which means they have to come through some of the financing. Now, the type of debt that you do take on is very imperative, because also remember, any type of debt, regardless of good debt or bad debt, when it is in excess, can be very detrimental to not only your credit score, but also your financial situation. So what is good debt? Now, good debt is classified as something that is going to increase your income or increase your net worth. So some examples of this could be buying a home that is going to appreciate in value, getting student loans. Now, student loans can be viewed as good debt because it is for the futurement and for the betterment of yourself, especially with student loans, because the rates can be somewhat forgiving, and there are a lot of options if it does turn to bad debt or if you do accumulate a lot of debt. Now, car loans, for many car loans, like I've said before, the depreciation of the car loans can be very detrimental going into the bad debt. However, we do need a car to drive to jobs, to drive to grocery stores. Regardless, we have to have something to commute, which puts the car loans under good debt because they do have value. Now, keep in mind, guys, with the auto loans is if you're putting money down, you can be in a very good position versus carrying a very high car payment that can be classified as bad debt. And like we had mentioned, guys, mortgages are another one. Really knowing how much of a home that you can afford is imperative. They say roughly that your payment should be 30 to 36% of your income. For a majority of people, even at a 30-year mortgage, they cannot fit into that bucket, meaning they're buying or refinancing or looking to buy too big of a home for what they have budget wise. On this channel, I make videos about finance, investing, financial freedom, making money, and financial literacy because I know I can educate people. If you like the content that I provide, please consider subscribing to the channel so I can help the reach with others. When you start looking at, guys, 36% is the maximum number that you want to look at. Now, what is bad debt? Now, bad debt is, of course, very expensive debt, dragging down your financial situation and also driving down usually your credit score, because a majority of bad debt is number one, biggest priority, $1.03 trillion is high interest credit cards. That is right, guys. High interest credit cards are classified any credit card that is 20% or greater interest rate, which makes debt that you carry on that card just that much more expensive. Now, this is the reason why, even looking at the Dave Ramsey approach, why we take bad debt very serious and why we really look to eliminate and pay that down ASAP. Because essentially, the biggest tool that you have in your toolbox, guys, is your paycheck. Now, when you're giving away that paycheck, of course, that can be super detrimental because every time you have to think of the sunk cost, the more money, the more interest that you're paying into your credit cards, the more interest that you're paying into your Chase banks, the Capital Ones, the Synchrony banks. That is less money that you have to use elsewhere, whether it be investing, saving, emergency fund, college, whatever it is, you have to keep that in mind. Now, this also means keeping your spending under control, guys, using the debt snowball method, using the debt avalanche method, whatever is going to work incredibly well with you. Also, keeping an eye out for balance transfers, even though I do not really approve or recommend them. For a lot of people to save an incredible amount of money, depending on how much debt you have, you can actually do that with balance transfers, getting a much lower rate. But you have to be careful, guys, because a lot of people will balance transfer debt, then accumulate new debt on the card that they just balance transfer. Now you're stuck with two payments. Now you're stuck with new cards. Now, this is where a good budget comes in and a good debt management plan, which can be game changing when it comes to deciding and really building out your loans. Now, the other one that we look at, guys, are personal loans for discretionary purposes. Now, this is something that is one of my biggest pet peeves being in the financial industry. Some people will come in and they're like, I need to borrow $15,000. Okay, what are you using the funds for? I need to fund it for a wedding. That means you're starting off your married life, guys, $15,000 in debt, if not more, depending on where the budget actually comes in. Instead of looking at a multitude of ways to actually lower the amount or the cost of a wedding, looking for cheaper alternatives, possibly different venues, they're coming and they're starting their life $15,000 in debt. Now, we see the exact same thing when it comes to vacations, where we might have somebody come take $10, $15, $20,000 to go on a Disney vacation. they're going to spend the next 5 to 7 years repaying that vacation, which means, of course, for the next 5 to 7 years, you cannot take any additional vacations. But then that $20,000 vacation ends up costing you $28,000 over the 5 year term, depending on what your rate is, which makes your expensive trip that you took to Disney, or regardless of where you go, into a much more expensive liability, especially if something should happen like a job loss or a true emergency that happens. Now you are stuck with a payment on a personal loan that you really have to get away from. Now, again, personal loans can be a very good option. It is a tool if you are using it for what it is meant for, as a way to consolidate and eliminate debt, and also for needs that are true, tried and true needs, guys. It is not shopping for clothes. Again, it is not vacation. It is not wedding. It is not the discretionary purposes that a lot of people see. And the number one, guys, that I hate seeing are payday loans. Now, we did a video on this a little bit ago. The highest payday lenders are charging 360% interest, and you thought your 20% interest on your credit card was astronomical. Payday loans, because they are very short term, number one, they can turn super toxic very, very fast. Because of the short term lending, you can actually get trapped in a debt cycle where the interest that they're accumulating over a 7 or 14-day period, when you go back, you have to take a loan, loan after loan after loan after loan. It is a cycle you cannot break, because they have you trapped in a losing game where eventually it's going to get to the point where you can't take any more loans, because now the interest has run so fast that you're so far behind the 8 ball that you cannot catch up. Now, consider alternatives such as credit unions when it comes to the lending, guys, asking family members for help. If you're really in dire straits, there are a lot of programs, government programs. There are also local programs. Credit unions have a lot of programs. There are a lot of things. Before you get to this point, guys, consult financial experts. Go to your credit union. Most of them have financial counselors like myself that you can go through. You don't want to get into this debt cycle, guys, because it can be absolutely devastating. And again, really eliminating and managing the good debt as well. Student loans, when we talked about it before, student loans, you want to take out the money for education and make sure that you're really looking at the need, and making sure that even with good debt, guys, when it comes to student loans, when it comes to mortgages, when it comes to auto loans, what do you really need and what can you really afford based on your budget? Which is the reason, even with good debt, it can turn to bad debt very, very fast if it is not managed properly. All right, guys, good debt, bad debt. Let me know in the comments exactly where you're at with this and how you feel about both types of debt. And as always, thank you guys for watching.